Usually people are always like the bigger the better in a way, more challenging to print bigger. And then at the same time kind of challenge people to what if you make it smaller and how small can you go?
Hello, print friends, and welcome. I'm your host, Miranda Metcalf. Each week, I chat with artists who use print-based media to do something beyond the expected. This is a bilingual podcast, so if you subscribe to us, you'll be getting episodes in English with me, as well as in Spanish with Ronaldo Gil Zambrano. Together, we speak to printmakers around the globe about their practice and passions in the world of printmaking. Hello Print Friend is brought to you by Speedball Art Products, who've been offering a diverse range of high-quality products to your creative practice since 1997. But we all know that those products do not use themselves, and that is why Speedball works with a fantastic lineup of contemporary printmakers who make up the Speedball team of demo artists. Artists like Miles Calvert. This cheeky Canadian uses his wit and whimsy to make every demo as educational as it is fun. In his personal practice, major bodies of work include mass installations of screen-printed toast, you heard that right, toast, and the idolization of popular British celebrity culture. So, if you want to learn a few tricks of the trade and expand and improve your practice, head on over to Speedball's YouTube channel and you can see how it's done. There's a link in the show notes. My guest this week is Martin Schneider, founder of the Open Press Project. We talk about creating the world's first widely accessible model for the 3D printed printing press, which started as a university project and kind of came to take over his whole life, why he gives the design away for free, and his traveling exhibition of tiny prints made on this special little press. So, without further ado, sit back, relax, and prepare to get rolling with Martin Schneider. Hi Martin, how's it going?
It's going really well. Thank you, Miranda. Thanks for having me. It's a great honor to be on this podcast.
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited to get a chance to talk to you about your project and how you came to it and that story, because the Open Press Project is something that I've been following along since it came on my radar. And I just think it's such a cool, unique thing to have in our print world, in our global print family. So I'm really excited that you could join me. Yeah.
Means a lot to hear that from you, definitely. Yeah.
Yeah. So before we start getting into the story and the narrative and this cool thing that you've got going on, would you please introduce yourself and let people know who you are, where you are, what you do?
Sure. My name is Martin Schneider. I'm a designer and printmaker from Cologne, Germany. And some people may have seen the little 3D printed printing presses that have been going around on Instagram and social media. And I'm the initial designer of it. So, yeah, that's
wonderful.
me.
And where are you now?
I am in Cologne. So
okay.
I was born and raised in Cologne, and I've not been able to get away, basically, for a long time.
Yeah. A lot of us have been in one place for sure. So there's been a little pandemic going around, making travel a bit more difficult.
Yep.
But so I did my master's in Northern Renaissance art. I traveled in Germany and got to see the museums there. And so I really associate Germany personally with printmaking and with the kind of birth of the European traditions and some of the great masters like Dürer and Schongauer and people who were working in what's now modern day Germany. Was that a part of your childhood growing up? Did you feel the art historical tradition of the land that you were growing up in as a part of that landscape of your childhood?
That's a good question. I'm not really sure. Like, I've been starting printmaking when I was 15 years old, but I've only started in like the local printmaking workshop. And basically in Cologne, there's just one institution that is really doing that, and like where you can take courses and have an open workshop where you can do your printmaking. And well, before like the Open Press Project, I wasn't really into the printmaking community at all. It was more like a local thing in Cologne. I was definitely aware of it because of it, But yeah, not so much, because I think like Cologne is a little bit not as vibrant in that community, not like Berlin or Leipzig, all of these other cities, maybe.
Yeah. Did you go to museums growing up and have art a part of your life in a more general way?
Yeah, I did, definitely. Like, so I have a twin brother, and we were always like going with our dad to exhibitions, to local exhibitions, but also to museums around the country. Definitely, yes, sure.
Yeah. And that was that something that you enjoyed, or was it kind of more of a obligatory family outing?
Oh no, no, not at all. No, it was I was really enjoying it and getting the all of the inspirations, and just what maybe led to what I'm doing now as well.
And so you said you started a local workshop at 15, getting your introduction to printmaking there. When and how did that happen? Did you just see it on the street and decide this is something I want to be involved in? Or, yeah, I
Kind
guess
of.
at
It was kind of
15, yeah.
sudden. Yeah. It was for an internship. So when I was in ninth grade, like there's this usual internship where people kind of have a look in a job they like. And I found this printmaking workshop, didn't know what it was about actually. I just liked drawing basically. And I walked in and I asked if I could be an intern. And they never had an intern up to that point. And I'm kind of the historic intern there that never left. So I did my internship for like 3 weeks there, and then they adopted me. Like, it's become my second home, and it's a very like special place in Cologne with really nice people. And yeah, it's my second home.
Yeah, yeah. It sounds like you were able to connect with some of that printmaking community, the printmaking sense of place that I think a lot of us find in print shops. Would you say that's
Exactly.
true?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, lovely. And so when you were there, were you doing etching, intaglio, relief? What was your sort of focus within printmaking?
Yeah, I always liked printmaking because I come from like the drawing side of things. So I really like dry point etching and soft ground, hard ground etchings. That's always been like my focus kind of, but I've tried all of the things basically at my internship, and then moving forward being there once a week and doing my own stuff. So
Yeah.
yeah.
And before we get into the Open Press project, what is your art? How would you describe your practice that you do personally?
Well, so I started off as an illustrator, basically in the kind of the world of game design, concept art.
Mhm.
I really liked character design, so lots of characters for me, lots of kind of yeah, in the sense of game design, and yeah, that world is like it's a whole different world. But I try
Yeah.
to kind of connect it with printmaking too, and I had a couple of exhibitions, but I was more like doing illustrations and experimenting with. Now I'm experimenting with new techniques, trying to come up with my own techniques. That's kind of like what I do now. But the Open Press project has been kind of my main project, and since I published it, or since I'm working on it, kind of my personal art has kind of been in the background, which is
Mhm.
not a bad thing. It's like I get much more fulfillment out of the Open Press project right now. So.
Yeah. And so, how did the Open Press project come to be? What's the story of its founding?
So I was studying design, or I'm actually still studying design, but it's a course called Integrated Design, where we do like all kinds of disciplines in design and try to make projects that incorporate a lot of different techniques or disciplines. And there was this exam coming up, so I needed a topic, and I always wanted to kind of combine the printmaking with my design studies, because I felt like lots of my fellow students didn't even know what an etching is, or like
Yeah.
they don't know intaglio printmaking, which is kind of a shame. Like most of them have done lino cuts, or like maybe potato printing in
Mhm.
kindergarten or something,
Yep,
but like
classic.
they never tried etching. And I kind of wanted to, well, I was kind of thinking about what the reason behind that is. And because I was doing lots of product design at that moment and 3D printing, I kind of, yeah, the idea emerged of could I design a printing press that is 3D printed and make it work, especially for intaglio printmaking, because etchings and engravings and dry points and stuff need much more pressure to print. I
Right.
feel like it's much less accessible than a lino cut, for example, where well, in theory, you could always use a spoon to print a lino cut if you really wanted to, which is great, which is like one of the the best things about liner cut, I think. And I felt like lots of people don't have access to all of these other techniques because the hurdle of having a press is so high. They're usually like so expensive, so heavy, and kind of difficult to get. You have to have the space. And I was kind of thinking that an open source project could kind of fix that or kind of counteract this. So I was planning on coming up with a design of a press and put it online for free for people to use. So people with access to a 3D printer in a school or maybe university, or lots of people who go to local libraries, they could manufacture their own tiny press for free and then kind of have access to all of these techniques.
Yeah. So how do you actually go about making that leap between I want to design a 3D printed press and here is the design for a 3D printed press? That seems like such a huge undertaking. How did you even begin to figure out what was needed and all the moving parts and the coding? Like, where does all that come from?
Well, luckily there's no coding involved, but
really? See, I always figured. This is like my total brand newbiness when it comes to 3D printing. I was imagining like you'd need coding, but that's not. So maybe just can start
not
there.
really.
So like, what is
Sure.
like the design for anything 3D printed? What does that even look like?
So, well, I maybe like explain it with the press. I would kind of like come up with a prototype or design in my head, and then I would design it in CAD, like a computer aided design. It's like a 3D program on the computer where you design your 3D part, and then you have kind of a slicing program as like a separate software where you prepare it for printing. So you basically slice the 3D model into layers, and that kind of sends it off to the 3D printer, and it's then gonna kind of make it for you. Basically, that's the short explanation.
It sounds like that there's programs that are already out there in the world that you can use to make your design and create something that you're looking for. And had you gotten exposure to those through your design classes?
Yes, exactly. And luckily, these programs are all like open source. There's lots of free software and a huge community behind it where you can get help if you have any questions. So it's a whole new community to get into. But yeah, it's really fun. And you get so many possibilities with 3D printing. I really like it.
Oh, that's so cool. And I feel like I've heard about that kind of culture of free access to things on the internet, that it's really almost like an ideology that there's certain corners of the internet have about information not having a paywall of any kind, and that accessibility is somehow inherently important, and that the democratic possibilities of the internet are really important to take advantage of. And I feel like there's a lot around 3D printing that falls into that narrative.
Yes, exactly. There's also it's kind of always a juggle between can I make a living from it and have it open source as well, like at the same time.
Right. Yeah.
So like it's a interesting thing and like a challenge to juggle. But for the Open Press project, luckily, because it was like a university project, I was totally fine with it being for free. It was like not for profit. I was getting my credit points. I got my A. I was fine. And then kind of like anything further was just on top. Luckily, like lots of people were so excited about it.
Yeah. And so the presses themselves, I'd love to if you could speak to the physicality of them a bit. So how big are they? I know I've got one here that's attaches to a table, which is a brilliant way to get it to be secure, because they are quite light. They're 3D printed, and they need to have, as you spoke to print and tell you need a fair amount of pressure. And so there needs to be some kind of counterbalance.
Yeah,
how many moving parts do they have? All of that.
Oh, if I could remember. So it's there's just one size. That's kind of the only size that we've been able to make it work. And we spent a lot of time to make it work with international shipping and stuff, because like if it's too heavy, then like shipping costs increase like exponentially. It's crazy. So it was always kind of an in-between of making it big enough so people could make artwork with it or print with it. At the same time, kind of make it as portable as possible too. It's fairly small. You can it's like 7.5 centimeters by 23 centimeters, which is like 3 inches by 9 inches, I think. That's kind of the maximum size of paper that you could print on. And especially when you do intaglio printing, it's always like better to have smaller plates than that, not like use the full size bed. So like the prints that come out of it are really tiny, which is so fun to see, because like usually people are always like kind of the bigger the better in a way. Like it's more challenging to print bigger, and then at the same time kind of challenge people to what if you make it smaller, and how small can you go? And it's been really fun to see what people print with it.
Are there limitations in terms of size beyond shipping? Is there like a certain structural thing that breaks down if you were to make one that was 4 feet by 4 feet or something? Of course, access to a 3D printer that size would be a huge barrier too, but is there also something about the material as well that puts a limitation on?
Probably. I mean, I'm not an engineer, so don't quote me on that. But yes, yeah, probably. At some point, it's not useful anymore, I guess. At some point, it's better to have a metal press, to have like a cast iron and like the usual presses you get. And well, because you're mostly limited by the size of your printer. So there are people that have printed it much larger, and it seemed to work. But because this project is all about like accessibility or like access to printmaking, I wanted to make it work with most 3D printers out there. And that's kind of the size that like it's like a 15 by 15 centimeters cube. That is like every 3D printer is able to do that.
And so where have you seen the 3D printed presses out in the world? What are some of like the fun places you've seen them pop up since you started the project?
Yeah, I mean, because I'm based in Germany, it's always fun to see them on the other side of the world.
Yeah.
So there's presses in Hawaii. There's actually one person that printed a lino cut on an airplane, which was so fun to just kind of see the tiny table. And I always joke that this might be the highest lino cut ever printed.
Yeah,
I don't know how she got that through security, especially with the ink and stuff. But yeah, it's really fun. And then there's like, of course, New Zealand, Japan, and Mexico. So like, it's always fun to see them pop up in totally different places. And then at the same time, it's really fun because I'm in England every year. Basically, I'm attending an art fair called Woolwich Print Fair in London, and it's all about printmaking. And it's so fun to then like meet people that have your presses. It's so surreal to kind of talk to people that only know you from like online social media.
Yeah.
And this has been kind of increasing with the years. I really love it there.
And as you spoke to the accessibility of printmaking, do you see them getting used like in schools much? I know that was one of the first goals, and you're seeing that come to fruition.
Yes, definitely. I mean, especially during the pandemic, people didn't have access to a workshop, and that's when teachers started to, because they had access to the schools, but the schools were closed in some areas. They started to do a collaboration with their kind of technical teachers, their 3D printing teachers, and there has been schools that have equipped like a whole class with sets where every student gets a press and materials and stuff, and they get like a package, and then they can do it all at home and do like Zoom calls with it. So yeah, and this has been increasing. Another thing is museums. So like the educational kind of people at museums doing workshops with it to kind of ease people into printmaking, because it's much less daunting, I guess. It's like it's not having this big press, but a really small one that you can use to get really quick results. And for kids, it's so much fun to figure out how printmaking works and how press works.
Yeah. And again, I'm looking at kind of the physical structure of the press I've got here, and it does have a metal roller in that one. And so that's, I assume, not 3D printed, correct?
So the version you have is the version that we manufacture. There's two versions, basically. There's the open source version where the upper roller would be 3D printed as well. So it's really easy to manufacture your own press. You just need 2 bolts, basically, and a blanket, and that's it. And then you can start printing. That's the concept of the open source version, whereas the version we manufacture is more focused on durability, because if you don't have a 3D printer, you can't just reprint parts that break. So to make them more durable, and that's kind of where the ball bearings and the stainless steel roller comes in. And this is all followed by this is all set up after the Kickstarter that we did. So in 2019, we ran a crowdfunding campaign, and I was expecting maybe 150 orders maybe. And I was overwhelmed. We ended up with 1,500 orders.
Oh my God.
It was crazy, terrifying, and amazing at the same time. And then kind of the whole journey of figuring out how to found a company and get these made, basically setting up production, and then finally be able to ship all of them has been, it's been very challenging, but really fun to kind of now be able to book on new products, new projects, because we have 3D printers now.
That's great. And you're saying we? Who else is involved in the project?
Before the Kickstarter, it was only me, because it was just a nonprofit. I was just doing it besides studying. And then because I got so many orders, luckily my good friend Dominic Schmitz decided to join in, even though it didn't look very good at the beginning. I had miscalculated quite a bit. I was just focused on getting them as affordable as possible. And I ended up not incorporating certain costs. So in the beginning, it was really a challenge to kind of figure out how to manufacture them without going bankrupt immediately. So, and he joined in, and now it's just the two of us basically working on it.
I feel like that's such an interesting part of the story. And as someone who myself, I like to take on projects, even if I don't really know too much about doing them. But that way of how you had this idea, and then it became so much, the demand for it was so much greater than you anticipated. And then on top of that, you'd realize that there's more to this than you had initially anticipated. That must have been kind of terrifying, I would guess.
It was. Yeah, I was not expecting it. And it took a while to get used to it. I wouldn't want to miss this. 2019, 2020 have been so much work, but we got out ahead, I guess. And
yeah. And then on top of being a student, which is it's a whole other thing. So
it kind of is. I must say that my study is kind of it hasn't gotten as much attention lately. I'm basically just right in front of my bachelor's, so I just need to do my thesis basically, and then I'm done. And I'll be doing that soon.
And so, in terms of, I always am interested to talk to people who have had this idea for a project, and then not that it's done yet, but already moved through some of the wobbly, up and down, shaky beginnings. If you were to go back and talk to 2018 Martin before this project, what would you want to say to him about taking on OpenPress?
That's a good question. I don't know if I would say anything. Maybe, I guess if I would have known how much work it would be and how much kind of problems would arise, I might not have done it. So it was probably a good idea to not know what I'm getting myself into, kind of in a way.
I totally understand that. I honestly do. Yeah, I think there's really something about the blissful ignorance, when you're on the precipice of taking on something.
Exactly.
That you need that, as you say, that naivete to make it into fruition. So you mentioned in passing just now that you're looking or thinking about at least other projects, because it sounds like more or less you've gotten most of the kinks worked out of the OpenPress project, in the sense that you've got the open source version that people can just use. But then, as you say, you also are selling these wonderful little slightly more durable presses that they're so cute. I'm just looking at my desk now. It's they're so cute. That those actually you can sell to people, and that's of course, at a cost which is just astronomically lower than a full-size etching press. But
Yes, and
yeah.
yeah, on that point, maybe like we also like sell them for our own cost. So we have this concept of people can choose if they want to pay on top to enable us to work on future projects, for example. But kind of like we're trying to keeping the costs as low as possible to lower the hurdle basically as much as possible.
Oh, wow. And so it's sort of like a like choose what you pay kind of tiered
Exactly.
structure.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
Oh,
like you have 3 tiers and you can pick one, whatever kind of suits your situation right now. And it's like a kind of a donation based system. Yeah. And it's
yeah.
luckily like people are choosing to pay ourselves, like pay us a bit more so we can pay ourselves a small salary.
Yeah. Oh, that's wonderful. I love that. Like I feel like any project that comes from that place, it's such a great sense of hope for what humans are and where their values are. And this idea that like you can set something up where if someone truly can't afford to pay more than the cost of it, like they still get a press. And then
Yes.
just having faith that other people will be like, oh, well, I actually can afford to pay a bit more. And so I'll kind of cover some of that and step up and do that. And I love that. And I always love that it's such a wonderful shot in the arm to people who want to make a case for more socialist systems, or the argument against it is always like people will never work if they don't have to. People will never give more,
Right. Yeah.
and it's like, no, they will though.
Okay. Exactly. Yes. And it's, I mean, at the same time, it's scary too, like not being or like relying on this kind of.
Mm.
But yes, luckily it's been working out, and I'm really fortunate to be able to make a living out of it, even though I'm still a student and like my costs are not as astronomically high, I guess. But yes, I'm really fortunate to be able to do what I love at the moment.
And you said it, so it was, I remember originally you talked about it as like a nonprofit.
Mhm.
And then, so is it still a nonprofit or is it a for-profit business, I guess now? What's
Well,
the
it was never like a non-profit business in like
Gotcha.
a legal sense. It
Mhm.
was just a project basically, and I was not making any money with it. And well, now we have founded a company, so I guess we are a for-profit company, but we do a couple of things differently than like the regular, I don't know, manufacturing company.
When you're building things and doing things in the arts and making projects, there's almost sometimes like a sense of guilt to want to be, for me, to want to be compensated for my time, but then people around me often have to remind me that's not a good attitude to have, because what I'm bringing is of value and I should be compensated for what I'm bringing, and to be compensated makes it sustainable to keep doing it. And it's just a funny side, I think, of people who maybe have big hearts and work in the arts, where we're just like, no, 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 I'm just in it to help other people.
Yes, exactly. I know exactly what you mean, and it's been a curve as well, like getting from that point to a more like, okay, how is this gonna be in like 5 years? Maybe how is that gonna
Mm.
work? If it's gonna work, are we flexible enough to kind of pivot our things if it doesn't work out? But so far, if like as long as people are ordering presses and are like interacting in this awesome community, then I'm just gonna keep making presses.
Yeah. And so you mentioned perhaps maybe other projects. Do
Yes.
you have some dreams for what Open Press Project is going to be working on?
Interesting. I don't know about dreams. I mean, like the thing that gives me a lot of fulfillment right now is the print exchange that we ran last year,
Mm.
because, like, as I said, it's really fulfilling to see what people make with the presses, and having a print exchange was a really fun initiative to reach out to all of them with tiny presses and ask them like, do you want to participate in this and get prints in return? And we're gonna set up exhibitions, and the first exhibition just ended in Cologne, and we had another one that was kind of at the same time in Japan, and we kind of set it up so it's easy for us to scale. So it's really easy for like a printmaking workshop to show the exhibition somewhere else around the world, because it's tiny prints and they're all in tiny 3D printed frames. So it's like really light. We can just ship it around the world, and then kind of everything that goes along with a catalog, a book, an online gallery, and it's really kind of been fun to see the variety of things, because especially in these exhibitions, a print that was maybe from someone who just started in printmaking is right next to a print that is obviously from someone who has done it for years. But
Right.
they're on the same level, and there's not even like labels under them. They just have a number, and you can look up the number online to get background information on the prints. And it's been really fun to see them next to each other. And I'm going to the website and checking them out, because there's always a new print that I haven't looked at,
Oh, that's
even
so
though like
cool. How
I
many
had them in.
participants did you have?
We had like a bit more than
Oh
350,
my
I think.
gosh.
So like that's like 3,500 prints to kind of handle
I
and
was going to
ship.
say,
And
oh my gosh.
yeah, it was really fun. It was our first one. We were more careful than the initial Kickstarter to set this up. So we ran like a test run, asked a couple of people to join in, and then tested out the shipping stuff and all of the sorting and how we're going to do the photos. Luckily, Dominic is like a professional photographer, so he can do really high quality photos of all of the prints that we can use for the online gallery and the book, for example. And yeah, it's been a round project. It's been really fun to with these people, and then kind of people travel to the exhibitions as well. And it's so great to meet them.
So it's a print exchange as well as the exhibition. So what's the edition size? And then how many prints do people get back?
So it was an edition of 10 each. So people would send in 10 identical prints and get 9 back from other participants. And one of them would be kept for the exhibitions and for the online gallery to be photographed and be shown in exhibitions. That's the thing. And they were always like, all of them were 7 by 7 centimeters sized. So all of them were square, and we could, because the quality of the photos are so good, we could scale them up to 60 by 60 centimeters without having like a loss in quality. And then you can really see the texture of the paper and the deckled edges. And yeah, it's
Very
really
cool. And then so you 3D printed, was it 350 frames? Was the exhibition every print, or did you curate it?
well. We're not curating in any way. Like, we wanted to, because we feel like it's not our position to judge what is a good print, what is good enough to be in the exhibition. So we are always either picking random collections of prints. So for example, for the Japan one, we just picked 99 random prints and sent them off. And then, yes, we have printed 350 tiny 3D printed frames, which is not that much of a deal, because of the Kickstarter, we have set up our 3D printers to work automatically. So like they spit out finished parts for us. It's always to get them dialed in, but then it's like they are working for us 24/7. And like a couple of days later, I think it took like 3 or 4 days to print all of them, and then like you have to set them up and frame them. That was much more work. But
Yeah, I'm just imagining you like just coming into like a literal pile of 3D printed frames that this like machine's just spitting out for you.
it's really slow though. Like each frame takes 1.5 hours or something.
Yeah.
Yes, but basically it's coming back to like a box of 30 frames, and then having to check them and prepare them.
Yeah. And then did you get like little squares of glass as well? Are they all under glass?
No, they're not. Glass would be like too heavy.
Yeah. And
And
then delicate again with the shipping. And
exactly.
yeah.
Yeah. And we have built like a special box for it. So they are always neatly sitting in like foam, and you can package them up really neatly in like a small box and then ship it. And it's really easy for people to set up the exhibitions that way.
That's super exciting. And if I believe that you will be sending out an invitation again this year for anyone who'd want to participate. Is that correct?
Yes, exactly. I mean, we're aiming at doing this every year now, because it's so much fun. And so it's probably going to be really similar, but we're planning to run another one in November and have people register in November, just like last time. And then there's going to be a deadline for the sent-in prints, which is going to be next year. But yeah, that's all to be decided.
Absolutely. Oh, that sounds really exciting. So where could people see, because you said the archive is there of these like very nicely documented works. And then also, where could they sign up for this year's if they're keen to join in the fun?
Yeah, so the official website is openprintexchange.com. That's where the online gallery is. And there's going to be a link for the next one as well. But then again, it's all going to be like on social media. We have a newsletter too. It's like, yeah, we're not going to be, it's going to be everywhere.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I know you said that you've got a curatorial neutrality when it comes to it, but do you have any like particular favorite prints that you've seen someone make? Not even necessarily part of the exchange, but just in the years you've been doing it, ones that stand out that you just are really delighted by what someone took with your project and took on creating?
I always like the Japan ones. I always like because there's like most of them are really intricate, and I really like the intaglio ones. So having like a really detailed hard ground etching of this illustration is really what I really like. And then at the same time, it's so fun to see them from Mexico as well. I feel like they have really special style, and it's like very different in a way. It's mostly lino cut, and you got skulls, and like I really like them both equally, I guess.
Yeah. Well, I was thinking actually about Japan, particularly with the scale of the work, because I've traveled in Japan and I've stayed in Tokyo for a while with friends, and the flats there are quite small. I mean, it's just it's true that you can be in an apartment that's the size of an American kitchen in a studio, and they make it very cozy and it works, but there just truly would be no way to have any kind of traditional press in a space like that. You wouldn't be able to walk from one side to the other. And so the fact that you've got this press that just attaches to a table or a desk, I mean, it would be perfect for people who are living in cities that do have like the smaller square footage. So I could see why people would be very excited about that. Yeah.
Definitely. And like I guess we are planning to focus more on different languages as well. So like right now we're only communicating in English, and that kind of leaves us with lots of people from the US, Australia, and all of the like English speaking countries, UK. And it would be really fun to we're just two people, but maybe we can kind of expand that and have Spanish as well, have all of the Spanish people in the community too, and Japan, and like maybe Korean. It's like, yeah, that would be really fun to open this up even more and make this even more international.
Yeah. I mean, would you like to make a little call out right now on the podcast for anyone who might be willing to offer some translation?
That would be amazing. I guess we have to figure out the technicalities, because if it's too much trouble to implement this in all of our material, then we have to kind of think about this. But yes, in general, that would be really cool to have translations to all kinds of languages.
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, if someone's just listening and is interested, they can shoot you an email, it sounds like, and you can kind of figure it out as you go. But there's a lot of international listeners, to the podcast I see on my analytics. So if anyone's listening and they're like, hey,
that would be amazing.
I could translate this into Mandarin.
Perfect.
You got the two aspects of the project, and you've got this print exchange. Do you have any other ideas that if you were kind of in like unlimited time and resources that you'd like to see Open Press Project expand into? That's not enough already what you're doing, but I always think it's interesting if you had all the time in the world and what you'd like it to be.
Yeah, I mean, I would probably focus a lot more on the community. I mean, that's kind of, we're trying to do that already, but having more community challenges, having more projects like the Open Print Exchange, having more exhibitions around the world, and then at the same time, because I'm basically, I just love tinkering and making stuff and coming up with new projects and new products. And that's kind of where I would put most of my time, probably, like work on new press related products that are 3D printed, and kind of, make it available to the community.
And you said that the press is designed for intaglio, but people can use it for relief printing. How do they go about doing that?
So the press is capable of printing blocks that are up to like 2.5 centimeters, so almost an inch high. And lots of people would actually use them for lino cut as well and do monoprints or all kinds of techniques, basically. And for bigger blocks, it's probably useful to use runners. So you would have like little strips of the same material next to it, so the roller doesn't fall down and kind of keeps it's the right height, and that's kind of what people are doing.
Yeah. Oh, that's so cool. Well, where can people find Open Press? And I know you mentioned the exchange, but just in general, where are you out there on the internet where people can see what people are making and get involved and maybe download what they need to make their own presses?
Yeah, the best address is probably Instagram. It's at Open Press Project, and that's kind of where we are reposting other people's work, so people can kind of tag us, and then we'd kind of share it with the community. And if you're like planning to print your own press or order them from us, it's openpressproject.com. And there's kind of instructions on what to keep an eye out if you're 3D printing them. There's a couple of aspects that you kind of need to make sure to make a durable press. That's it's openpressproject.com, and then the online gallery would be at openprintexchange.com.
Very cool. Well, Martin, I'm so happy that you're out here in the print world working on this project because it's so neat. And I know that I have just really loved seeing what people make on these presses. They're so creative, and I love what you spoke to earlier in our conversation about how people think that larger is harder, larger is more challenging, but really making like a really successful image that's quite small is so challenging too. And so it's really amazing to see the way people take that on and the way they're using your presses to do that. So it's very exciting. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. And so for sure, if people make something, they can tag you in it. And yeah, definitely, I'd love to see anything. If anyone hears this and makes something, that definitely tag the podcast too. I'd love to see like what comes out of our conversation and gets made into the world for people who are introduced to this cool thing that you're doing. So
that's awesome. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Martin. It's been really fun chatting and learning more about what you do.
Well, thank you. Like, I've been listening to this podcast whenever I'm assembling presses, so I feel I should be really downstairs assembling them. I need something to fidget, so it's really surreal to be on it. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, this has been great. If you like today's episode, we have a Patreon where you can help us keep the lights on and get bonus content, like Shop Talk Shorts, where our editor, Timothy Pauschak, digs deep on materials, processes, and techniques with past guests. And if monetary support is not in the cards for you right now, you can leave a review for us on your podcast listening app of choice, or buy something from one of our sponsors and tell them Hello Print Friend sent you. But as always, the very best thing you can do to support this podcast is by listening and sharing with your fellow print friends around the world. And that's our show for this week. Join me again next week, which will be the last episode in our IFPDA Print Fair trilogy. It'll be a double hitter episode in which I talk with the incredible artist Derek Adams and our patron saint of printmaking, the philanthropist Jordan Schnitzer. You won't want to miss it. This episode, like all episodes, was written and produced by me, Miranda Metcalf, with editing by Timothy Pauschak and music by Joshua Weber. I'll see you next week.